the Fit and Healthy Athlete Podcast.
Debbie Potts is here to help you burn fat, optimize health, and enhance your performance in life as you age. We'll explore metabolic health, holistic health, and actionable insights with guest experts and deep dives into health topics. Whether you're an athlete or just looking to thrive, let's discover how to become your best self. Let's get started.
Hey, it's Debbie Potts, and I wanted to do another follow-up to a previous Rabbit Hole podcast on how important gut health is for brain health, as I'm focusing on what I can do in middle age to be my best self in the future, and that really is to avoid cognitive decline. I want to have my brain sharp as I age. So I wanted to do a follow-up conversation about the role of insulin resistance on our brain and how midlife insulin resistance can shape your cognitive future. I would love everyone to get their blood chemistry panel done once a year is not enough. I want you to do your blood chemistry panel 2 to 3 times a year. We need to be keeping on top of our labs and not waiting until we have problems. So ideally you're doing blood chemistry panel 2-3 times a year, so think quarterly, and then doing a stool test once a year for sure, and maybe organic acids test. But we can get a lot of information from blood chemistry testing, but the problem I have is the ranges that are on what you get from your doctor, you're almost always going to be, oh, you're normal, nothing's wrong with you. But when we look as an FDN practitioner at blood chemistry panel and do a functional blood chemistry panel assessment, a deep dive analysis, there's so much information there, but it really gives us clues that we need to dig deeper and understand why is that higher or lower than optimal level. And the lab ranges your doctor's looking at are normal ranges. And look how big those ranges are. It's ridiculous. I don't want to be normal. Those are based on just the average unhealthy person. I want to look at optimal. What should I be to be a health optimizer and be my best self in the future? So getting your insulin tested, sadly, insurance, the doctor, the medical system is not doing unless you have diabetes. But guess what? We should be looking at insulin way before we have diabetes, type 2 diabetes. I can get you to go to Ulta Labs and use my discount code, or go to Rupa Health and we can order insulin for, I think it was $10, $15. So I want you to understand that sometimes we have to take our health in our own hands and not just depending on one practitioner, one doctor, one expert to do everything. We need to understand working with a practitioner ideally to help guide you to sort out all this chaos and understand where you need to go to restore metabolic harmony. So your body does what it's supposed to do by giving it the ingredients it needs to bring back the innate intelligence online, right? So we're focusing on this show, how we can train your mitochondria, rebuild your metabolism, and help you be fit and healthy from the inside out at a cellular level so you can be your strongest future self as you age. So I wanted to connect two things that we did not talk about in the other cognitive episode as much as I'd like to. Insulin resistance in the body and the connection to cognitive decline and brain aging in midlife and beyond. So if you care about your memory, your mood, your focus, your long-term brain health, this is an episode you want to save and maybe listen to 2 times or more. Because if you watch how our parents are aging, maybe you've lost a parent as I have, I'm seeing how we've got little miscommunication with what's going on and how to treat a lot of these health issues. Not with medication, but with lifestyle, nutrition, and exercise. So I call this the holistic method. 8 elements: nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management, movement. Notice movement and exercise are 2 different categories. Gut health, which is digestion as well in that category. Minerals, well, it's actually hydration, but I think of it more mineral balancing and hydration together. And then the 8th category is happiness, having gratitude, being grateful. Good gratitude practice is huge. Having joy, happiness, and really think of that as the people you surround yourself with. Are they energy robbers, or are they lifting you up and making you happy, making you laugh, smile, bringing joy to your life? So when I'm working with clients, it's not all about lab testing of supplements. In FDN, we call it the Dress for Health Success program that we're working on, the D, R, E, S, and then the S. So D in FDN world is diet. I always hate that word diet, so I like to say nutrition. And R is for rest, E is for exercise, stress is the S, and the second S is supplementation, where we need to. But today, focusing on metabolic health, how it's related to brain health, and how being in our middle age is really a turning point where we should be, turn 50, and I started to go, okay, how am I going to live my second half of my life? What can I do that I'm not doing already to be even better, to take it a little bit deeper and start to be preventative as things change as we age. But as I say every episode, don't blame the aging process, embrace it and start doing things different. So let's start with something simple. Most people think insulin is just a blood sugar hormone. But insulin is actually a master communication hormone that tells your cells what to do with fuel. Now, in our 20s and 30s, you can often get away with not sleeping very much. You have poor sleep habits. Maybe you're living in a high-stress environment, high-stress lifestyle, and perhaps you have less than ideal nutrition. Your system is a little more forgiving in your 20s and 30s, but then we start to hit our 40s and then the 50s. Middle age is a metabolic crossroads section. It's similar to standing on a teeter-totter. On one side, tips up towards vibrancy, strength, sharper thinking. But on the other side, tips towards fatigue, belly fat, brain fog. And what determines which way your teeter-totter tips? Your hormones, your muscle mass, your mitochondria, and your nervous system adapt, or are they failing to adapt as you age? This is what we are talking about in all these different episodes. I'm really working hard at getting out on 2 days a week. Because as we move into our 40s, 50s, and 60s, a few big changes happen. As you know, we have hormone shifts. Estrogen and progesterone drop for us females. And we can't blame everything on menopause. I feel that there's so much on menopause, but it's more understanding the why behind it and how we need to change things again, being more resilient and prioritizing our protein and our strength training and all the lifestyle habits. But as our estrogen and progesterone drop for women, and we'll talk about men, but this does reduce your glucose transport into your muscles and your brain cells. This is similar to losing parking spaces for carbohydrates. There's not enough parking spaces for everybody. Now, for men and women, we know testosterone levels drop and your DHA levels drop. This means less muscle building signaling towards slower recovery, we have less muscle building signaling, but we also experience slower recovery. As I feel, I just tried running this morning intervals and stair repeats, and I had nothing from doing my leg workout yesterday. I'm taking a lot longer to recover. Now, I did do a swim workout and I felt great, but weight-bearing exercises, running, it takes me a lot longer to bounce back. So I need to switch my workout routine and have more days off running and then, getting my strength training in the right days so I can actually run and not walk, or wogging, I call it, it's a walk and a jog, so it's called wogging. Also, we have less protein turnover and lower resting metabolic rate, which is why I love people to do PNOE metabolism testing so we can identify baseline and retest every 2 months and see our progress, because we need to do things differently. Also, we know that cortisol often rises, especially for us high performers, type A go-getters. Chronic stress tells your body, store more fat around your belly. keep your blood sugar higher, just in case. Every stress response is a blood sugar response. And I learned this the hard way as I was low carb, doing the keto thing, and I gained weight from my chronic stress. Raising cortisol raises your glucose. So we see as we age, I was having problems in my early 40s with my cortisol, HPA axis dysregulation, and my thyroid, because thyroid conversion slows down as well as we age. So we have less T4, the inactive thyroid hormone, converting to the active T3, which means your mitochondria don't get the signal from the thyroid that they need to create energy efficiently. So I've been taking T3 medication, thyroid, and it's really not raising it up a notch. So I'm doing the GI map. I did the mitochondria test, the me screen, and I know I need more antioxidants, and I need support my liver and my bile, and by taking choline, and I'm doing more omega-3. So that's why I feel that we need to test and spend some money on lab testing after we're already doing all the lifestyle habits. Then we can do some labs to go, okay, what am I missing? And looking at my genetics, I know I need more glutathione, I need more choline, and I'm more prone to insulin resistance already genetically, and now I'm middle age, even more so. So that's where we need to personalize what is best for you, and not just going, okay, everyone do it this way. Now, we can layer all this together. If we have estrogen, progesterone dropping, testosterone, DHA dropping, cortisol increasing, and thyroid conversion slowing, now we have more inflammation. You might see higher blood sugar, your fasted glucose level at the doctor, and A1C is higher. Maybe you have lower insulin sensitivity, more midsection building up, fatty belly, and you have just chronic fatigue. You're doing all the right things, but what is going on? You have to remember, you are not failing. It's your biology adapting to this unrelenting stress and this loss of muscle as we age. So I think understanding this is super important, and diving into our hormones and testing where you are, and then knowing what should you do to improve that hormones, and going deeper into your own labs and perhaps running a Dutch test so we see the different measurements. Okay, so those are our hormones changing. We know that, but then we need to figure out what to do differently. Next, we have huge players. The next two huge players are muscle loss and mitochondria slowdown. Beginning around age 35, we actually lose muscle mass naturally unless we intentionally fight back with strength training and adequate protein. Muscle loss starts at age 35. I'm 54. Even though I've been lifting weights a long time, I have to work harder. I'm spending more time prioritizing lifting weights and eating my protein now than I did 10 years ago. So if you're not changing the way you fuel and train after your 40s, or for sure your 50s, you need to stop and take inventory of what you're doing and pay attention. Am I doing the right thing? Every decade after age 40, you can lose up to 8 to 10% of your muscle if you don't intervene. So think of muscle as your body's glucose sponge. When you have a big healthy sponge, it can soak up and store a lot of glucose safely inside muscle cells. But what happens if that sponge shrinks? Now there's nowhere for the sugar to go. The result is more glucose floating around in your bloodstream, and more insulin is needed to handle it. And over time, cells start saying, I'm done listening to this insulin signal. This is what insulin resistance is. Now let's talk about your mitochondria. The mitochondria are your cellular engines. Think of them as your phone battery. When you're younger, your battery holds a charge all day long. But as we age, the chronic stress, the poor sleep, the chronic toxics overloading our toxin bucket, and under eating protein that we need a lot more now because we're more anabolic resistance. So now your cell battery drains faster. It takes longer to recharge and runs hotter. You have more inflammation. So you rely more on sugar, you burn less fat, and you're generating more exhaust fumes, oxidative stress. So when we have poor mitochondria function, plus we have less muscle mass and our hormones are changing, this is a perfect storm for midlife insulin resistance. Mitochondria are just as our cell phone battery. We need to figure out how to get the batteries to hold a charge all day long. Next, let's walk this straight up to the brain, because this is where it gets really important. Type 3 diabetes. Have you heard of that? It's related to your brain. And most of your brain symptoms we've been talking about, brain fog, word finding issues, memory glitches, mood swings. Again, this is not about getting older. It is early signs of metabolic brain stress. Your brain does run on glucose, but it needs insulin to use it. Your brain only weighs about 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20 to 25% of your total energy, even at rest. To get that energy, our neurons need just two things: a steady supply of glucose, but not too much. Not too little, not too much, just the right amount, the Goldilocks effect. And we also need insulin signaling. That's going to be the key to open the door and let the glucose in through the door into the cell. And when your body becomes insulin resistant, the brain becomes insulin resistant as well. We're not getting anyone to open the door up. The insulin doesn't have the key anymore. It's not being let in. The cells are resistant to that key. Now, when the neurons cannot get the right fuel, that's where we experience slower processing, memory lapse, brain fog, mood changing, fatigue, poor focus. This is why researchers are referring to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. And this is what happens when the brain is stuck in a long-term energy crisis, stacked with inflammation state, chronic inflammation. So insulin resistance is leading to brain energy crisis. And when the cells stop properly responding to insulin, we're going to have problems. We need to be able to respond and look at what are we able to do to be more alert. So we talked about protein in other episodes. We're talking about ketosis coming up for brain health. But what about this brain, sugar on the brain? Insulin resistance, when the cells stop responding properly to insulin. Glucose cannot enter neurons efficiently. Mitochondria make less energy. Oxidative stress increases. I think that is exhaust fume. We're always going to have it, but too much causes problems. We need antioxidants. And then neuroinflammation ramps up. So your brain isn't just tired, it's actually underfueled, inflamed, and missignaled. So this sets the stage for cognitive decline, memory changes, poor concentration, mood issues, and neurodegeneration over time. And this is what I want to connect the dots back to midlife. As we're middle age, this is time in our life that we can watch and prevent accelerating brain insulin resistance. Because in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, you're not just dealing with aging, we're dealing with stack of stressors, chronic stressors. Externally, and these internal hidden stressors. Hidden stands for hormones, immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy systems, and your nervous systems. But here, we're talking about the hormones. The estrogen and progesterone are lowering, so that's giving us another stressor because less glucose is transported to the brain and muscle. We have slower mitochondria and more brain insulin resistance. As our testosterone and DHA drop, we have less muscle mass, more fat, and more inflammatory cytokines. Because our cortisol is staying higher than it should be. Remember the Goldilocks and our circadian rhythm of cortisol to melatonin. Cortisol should be higher in the morning and lower at night, but blood sugar increases if cortisol stays up. If blood sugar is staying up all the time, we have more insulin spikes, and that leads to more brain inflammation, especially in the memory center of the brain called the hippocampus. Now, as sarcopenia starts, we lose muscle, we have less suitcase size. We don't have any big suitcases just shoved with clothes, right? We have less storage space in the muscle. And blood sugar stays higher longer after meals. So altogether, if we have higher blood sugar, more chronic inflammation, lower insulin sensitivity, we are at higher risk for cognitive decline. So what can we do? Midlife muscle is brain health insurance. Every pound of muscle you build and that you keep in your 40s, 50s, and 60s acts as a glucose sponge, an inflammation buffer, a blood sugar stabilizer, a mitochondria enhancer. So better muscle is going to give you better insulin sensitivity and better brain energy. Strength training increases BDNF and helps brain growth. When you lift weights, your muscles release myokines and increase brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And BDNF is often called miracle grow for your neurons because BDNF supports neuroplasticity, memory, learning, mood regulation. So strength training is not just for your biceps, it's for neuroprotective intervention. And this is another reason why I exercise and I use the sauna to help increase my brain-derived neurotrophic. So what are you doing to improve your future self and improve your brain health? So let's look at what else can you do to improve your aging process to avoid this, because we can change things. This isn't what has to be done. We need to look at the lifestyle habits, our nutrition, how we are exercising, because we need to have our body more insulin sensitive. Not too much glucose though, so there's that right amount. We can use ketones and take ketone IQ shot to help brain. We can get the right nutrients on board. But remember, higher blood sugar, chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, we're going to have cognitive decline. So let's work on the brain health, figure out what we can do as it's a neuroprotective intervention. To build muscle, to protect insulin sensitivity and support your brain, your nutrition has to match your physiology. So this is where I've been working on the Future You Blueprint manual and working on midlife muscle protein synthesis and how the 20-30 grams in one meal doesn't work as well as it should. And really being aware of all this marketing campaign again towards getting you to buy foods that have more protein in them. Having 15 grams here, and then I'm having 20 grams, and then I'm going to snack and have a 10-gram beef stick for 7 grams. I'm going to have 1 egg later on. That's 6 grams. It's not a total of 100 to 150 grams, whatever your ideal body weight is, goal of your ideal body weight in protein, grams per day. It's not accumulation. It needs to be in doses, 40, 50 grams per meal with this leucine threshold must be met. 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine in that protein meal to turn on muscle protein synthesis, especially since we have this anabolic resistance as we age. Some favorite high leucine nutrient dense proteins: steak, ground beef, lamb, chicken, salmon, sardines, mackerel, eggs, bison, pork, shellfish, Greek yogurt if tolerate dairy. You can add in color of non-starchy vegetables for antioxidants, fiber, or have some potatoes that are starchy vegetables if you're working out more. Layer in those smart carbs to support training and your metabolic flexibility. And as you get your right protein and get fats for cell membrane health, for your hormones, and carbohydrates based on your exercise and timing your carbs around those workouts, you can improve your insulin sensitivity, your muscle building repair, your mitochondria function, and production neurotransmitters as dopamine and serotonin. Then we need to add nutrients as omega-3 fatty acids, unless you're eating fish every single day. A B vitamin, preferably a methylated B complex. Magnesium, but there's different types. I use Biooptimizers, and they have 7 strains of magnesium in one bottle. Zinc, but not too much. You have to have your minerals balancing, so you have to have zinc and copper and everything. Look at the zinc the mineral wheel. It's very complicated. Choline and creatine. These are all crucial nutrients for brain health and insulin signaling. Next, I want you to think about sleep and stress. Major elements of the holistic method. One night of poor sleep can reduce your insulin sensitivity by 20 to 40%. That is huge. And when your sleep suffers, your cortisol goes up. Inflammation increases and glucose tolerance drops. And your glymphatic system, which is your brain's detox wash cycle we've spoken about, it doesn't work very well. This is why after a bad night, you crave sugar, you feel fuzzy, your mood is unstable. So for cognitive longevity, I want you to think of aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, a quality sleep. I want you to avoid heavy meals late at night. I want you to dim the lights and reduce blue light in the evening. And I want you to create your own sleep hygiene routine, creating a calm downshift ritual. And then I want you to create the morning ritual to help your sleep circadian rhythm. And chronic stress blocks your brain insulin signaling. Cortisol blocks brain insulin signaling. So think of chronic stress as static on the line between hormones and cells. When we have unrelenting high cortisol levels, we have elevated blood sugar, impairs insulin receptors, inflames the hippocampus, reduces neurogenesis, your ability to grow new brain cells. So really, chronic stress is leading to brain fog, anxiety, memory challenges, and mood swings. Stress resiliency is brain resiliency. So this is where we talk about every episode, my friend, the vagus nerve. We need that breath work. We need heart variability training, meditation, prayer, nature time, all of these lifestyle habits you have to do. It's not a pill. It takes work. And this is where often we need to start. And then I want you to move. Movement is brain medicine. One of the best tools to improve brain insulin sensitivity. So we're looking at strength training 2 to 3 times a week. Zone 2, peak fat max. I want you to test it 3 to 4 times a week, 30 minutes, 45 minutes max. Post-meal walking, even if it's 5 minutes, move. I want you to do breath work, that nasal breathing, box breathing, 4, 7, 8, 10 times a day. Bring down that cortisol. Low-level movement throughout the day is key. So I don't want you just to walk your 6,000 steps in the morning. I want you to walk, move, and get your 6, 10,000, 20,000 steps total the day, not at once. Think of movement as turning on this GLUT4 in your muscles and opening the door for glucose without needing tons of insulin. We want to activate glucose to get in the muscles by the GLUT4 transporter, and you won't need insulin as much to do that. So we create a clear, action-oriented future you blueprint, your midlife metabolic brain protocol, building muscle and maintain muscle. Eating protein-forward, nutrient-dense meals, training the mitochondria, protecting the brain at night, regulating your stress and nervous system, work on that parasympathetic practice, setting boundaries on your social media, your scrolling, your tech, your news, your work notifications, set boundaries. Huge. Turn off the Wi-Fi at night. Get rid of your cleaning and personal care products that have chemicals in them. Avoid using plastic. Filter your water. And test when you can. Because metabolic health is brain health. And we need to know what is your personal blueprint instead of just generic advice. So we can get testing, functional lab work, continuous data to create your personalized blueprint, just not generic advice. We can do a template, but we need to understand what is best for you. So if you're thinking, listening and thinking, hey, this is me. I'm training, I'm eating healthy, but I still have belly fat. I still have brain fog. My memory sucks and my energy levels are horrible. Then it's time to start thinking, maybe I should stop guessing and start testing and get a personalized future you blueprint based on your unique data. So we need to look at what is best for you and understand hormones do shift in middle life and do change things. And it's this metabolic domino effect that no one warns you about, but really, I don't feel any different. I just have to work harder. So I don't have all these stereotypes of what's going to happen to you in midlife, like hot flashes and not being able to sleep, because I'm doing all the right things already. And understanding when your hormones drop as estrogen, progesterone, glucose transport slows down. Estrogen isn't just this reproductive hormone, it's a metabolic multitasker. And estrogen increases the number of GLUT4 transporter, these garage doors that pull the glucose from the bloodstream into the muscle and the brain cells. And this will help keep our blood sugar stable, our energy high, and inflammation low. But when the estrogen levels start to drop in perimenopause and menopause, it falls dramatically. So we have fewer glucose garage doors. We have less glucose entering the muscles and the neurons. We have more sugar circulating in the blood. We have higher insulin levels needed for the same effect. So it's similar to losing half the parking spaces in a crowded mall we were talking about. Now there's nowhere for the glucose to park, so it backs up in the bloodstream. So we need to eat differently, less carbohydrates. We don't want this insulin resistance, belly fat, brain fog. So we need to change our food plan and maybe test with the CGM and understand what's going on. Because both men and women also rely on testosterone, DHA, to build muscle, to repair, to get stronger, and help with your metabolic rate. And testosterone and DHA activate mTOR. This is the growth and repair pathway I've been talking about. AMPK burns the fat, mTOR helps build the muscle. And muscle, remember, is your metabolic engine. So as our levels of our hormones start to begin to drop around age 40, and we have this chronic stress on top of that, and this decline accelerates of our hormones more so in their 50s, now we have this slower muscle protein synthesis we keep talking about. Harder to maintain and grow muscle. We have slower recovery, reduced mitochondria density, and lower resting metabolic rate. So it's switching from a high horsepower engine to a smaller one without you realizing it. That's why you need to take action now, because less muscle, we have less glucose storage we went over, we have higher blood sugar, right? And we also have more insulin resistance. Because chronic stress is also a part of this issue, creating this metabolic instability. Even if we're high performers, cortisol can be an issue, especially for you type A that we're trying to live life as a race, as I wrote about in my book, all day long. So then we're struggling with the chronic stress, the under eating protein, overtraining, emotional loads increasing. We have pressure from work, we have parenting, caregiving. So you're taking care of your kids, you're taking care of your parents, it all accumulates. And short-term cortisol increases blood sugar to help you respond to threat. But when it's staying high all the time, that chronic stress is giving you chronically high blood sugar. And it's telling your body, your brain gets a message, we are not safe. Store more fat and keep blood sugar high just in case something happens. And this is triggering more abdominal fat storage, higher blood sugar, more insulin, poor sleep, fatigue, breakdown of your muscles. So really chronic stress is that thermostat stuck on high and keeping your glucose elevated even when you're resting. And this is how I feel that I gained 30 pounds in a few months from being the best shape of my life to being my worst shape of my life in a short period of time, because chronic stress increases cortisol, increases glucose and insulin resistance. And then we have the thyroid. As the mitochondria lose their spark with this chronic stress, now we have thyroid that mostly produces your T4, the inactive form, but the liver, the gut bacteria, and the tissues convert T4 to the active T3. And to support a healthy T3 conversion, we need strong liver function, healthy gut flora, low inflammation, good sleep, adequate protein, zinc, selenium. But in midlife, our liver efficiency decreases, our gut flora diversity drops, our cortisol blocks T4 to T3 conversion, and our reverse T3 increases. Inflammation increases. So less T3, the active form reaches your mitochondria, so the mitochondria don't get the go signal to produce energy. The signal is weaker. So it's similar to having a perfectly good car, but someone took the spark plugs out, and you press the gas and nothing happens. So low T3 that I've been struggling with last few years, even with supplementing, still doesn't boost it enough. So I'm trying to take 2 of them and see if that changes anything. Slower metabolism, fatigue, cold hands, feet, weight gain. So this midlife metabolic domino effect doesn't necessarily have to happen. We need to change. We know these hormones are changing. We can manage our stress and help with this cortisol and help our thyroid conversion. But we want to look at it's not happening because you're lazy, you're not disciplined, you're not eating wrong. It's not that you're not trying hard enough. We just need to change how we're doing things because your physiology is adapting to chronic stress, to now this new muscle loss and hormonal shifts. This is not your fault. It's your biology trying to protect you. And once you understand that, you can strategically work with your biology instead of fighting it. So building muscle, eating protein-forward meals, supporting thyroid conversion and your gut health, protecting your mitochondria, prioritizing deep sleep, cortisol management, and strengthening the vagus nerve for nervous system resiliency. And I want you to move throughout the day and then a few days a week train in that peak fat max zone 2. When you support your hormones, support your brain, you support your metabolism, and then your future you will improve. But I think you need to look at what you're doing now, what's working, what's not working. And we need to start individualizing it and not get overwhelmed by over-researching. And I feel that so many people are they're overwhelmed with so much information. So what can you do? There is some more information I'll add on about ketosis for the brain and why your midlife brain loves having some ketones, especially as we're getting more insulin resistance. Because ketones are one of the most powerful brain fuels you have, especially in midlife. So taking a shot of ketone IQ, I do sometimes, so let me know if you want a discount code. I can find me a link. That as we age, our brain becomes less efficient, as we just went over, at using glucose due to these hormone shifts, our inflammation, mitochondria slowing down, reduced insulin sensitivity. And this is creating this brain energy gap. But taking ketones or getting a nutritional ketosis sometimes can close that gap. So let's go into the midlife brain and the glucose problem and how this might be a solution to do sometimes to work on you. So just bring it together. Again, we're trying to protect our blood-brain barrier. We need to reduce neural inflammation working backwards, supporting microbiome, stabilizing your blood sugar, how to improve our mitochondria, understanding how, working on the sleep, the strength training, the aerobic activity, reducing EMF, neurotoxins. We want to create a clear mind, build a resiliency in the nervous system if we want to build a stronger version of ourselves in the future. But I wanted to add in a section on ketosis. As I started talking about ketosis when we first started this podcast, it was called Fit, Fat, Fast in 2012. And so that's kind of how this podcast started, eating fat to burn fat, eat fat for endurance sports specifically. But now coming back to our attention on how we can fuel for improving our future health, specifically today on cognitive health, and we bring back how important ketosis can be for the brain. And now in midlife, since we're transitioning through the middle ages, how the brain loves ketones. And that's really where I have progressed in this field as LAT of HVMN, Ketone IQ, really taught us a lot about the research on ketones for the brain. Because most people think of just ketosis as a fat loss strategy, but really understanding where nutritional ketosis started from and getting ketosis back in the 1950s for epilepsy seizures. So we need to understand that ketones are one of the most powerful brain fuels you have. And now as we get into midlife, this can be a real big tool to have in your toolbox, because as we age, our brain becomes, as we now know, less efficient at using glucose due to these hormonal shifts, inflammation, mitochondria slowing, and reduction in our insulin sensitivity. So this alone creates a brain energy gap, and ketosis helps us close that gap. So let's break it down, because I was thinking about this and really how this might be coming in handy now. Not necessarily eating to be in nutritional ketosis, but taking exogenous ketones as HVMN ketone shot, how it can help as the midlife brain has glucose problem. And as we've taught all of us over the years, beginning in the late 30s and 40s, especially in menopause and andropause for men, your brain becomes less responsive to insulin. And as you know, that means that glucose cannot enter neurons as easily. Mitochondria produce less ATP, neuroinflammation rises, brain fog increases, memory and focus decline. So researchers call this the brain energy gap. And one of the earliest metabolic changes seen in cognitive decline, long before the memory symptoms show up. But then I'd go back to, are you testing insulin in your labs? Get that tested every time. Do it on your own. Don't go through insurance because they'll charge you way too much money, but go through Rupa Health or Ultra Labs. You can use my link. Now, ketones can bypass this problem. Ketones as beta hydroxybutyrate can enter the brain without needing insulin, and this is huge. Unlike glucose, ketones can use different transporters called MCT transporters, which remain active even when insulin signaling is impaired. Ketones provide clean and stable energy, lower inflammation, improve mitochondria efficiency, as well as giving a higher ATP output, enhanced neuron survival, and reduction in oxidative stress. So ketones feed the brain even when glucose cannot. And this is why I think ketones can be so powerful for people with cognitive health issues. Ketones increase brain energy production. Ketones increase the mitochondria ATP by more than 28% per unit of oxygen as compared to glucose. Ketones can upregulate the BDNF, our brain fertilizer we've been talking about. Ketones can reduce amyloid beta. That's the marker linked to Alzheimer's. And a reduction in excitotoxicity, and improve GABA to make us more calm, and lower glutamate, which helps us be wired and anxious. So that balance in between those neurotransmitters. Now, this helps explain why many people describe being in ketosis are more clear-headed, more focused, calm but energized, creatively sharp. So if you've heard about coffee drinks, adding MCT oil in, or as layered superfood ingredients help you be more clear-headed, more focused, having ketones basically in your coffee or your drink. Now, ketosis can reduce brain inflammation. Ketones are not just fuel, but they're acting as signaling molecules that can shift off inflammation in the brain. Ketones can lower the inflammatory signaling NF-κB. And ketones can reduce oxidative stress, ROS, reactive oxygen species, microglia activation, brain immune and overreaction. And ketones can increase BDNF, mitochondria biogenesis, and cellular cleanup, autophagy. And this is why ketosis is neuroprotective in Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, epilepsy, TBI, concussion, mood disorders, neuroinflammation, and cognitive decline. So do you have to get into keto to get the brain benefits? Not necessarily. As I said, you can do a ketogenic, strict low-carb meal plan to get high ketone output, best for therapeutic goals, but it requires consistency and keeping your carbs for people maybe around 20 to 50, but some people can be 100 grams if they're more athletic. Another way to get into ketosis is intermittent fasting, which if you're active and middle-aged and your hormones are all wonky, you might not want to do super long fasting. 12 to 16 hours of fasting or not eating can raise ketones naturally. This 12 to 16 hours fasting can support insulin sensitivity, support autophagy. So those are some simple ways, just not eating, say after 5 o'clock at night, and I don't eat until, say, 5 a.m. the next day, which is easy. So maybe you just start eating at 7 or it's 8 a.m. So then you automatically have that longer fast. Now, you can do lower carbohydrates in the mornings, but it depends on your exercise timing, right? Because these guidelines for ketosis are going to be different if you are exercising and we're trying to optimize that recovery and repair. So we want to make sure these are general tips, they're not personalized, right? So low carb in the morning might not be best for you, as I'm doing more higher workout, burning more carbs, higher intensity some days, lifting weights, and then today I did run intervals, or if I'm doing a bike ride, doing hills, I'm burning more carbs. So that's when post-workout, I need some protein and some carbs to help refuel. But some mornings when you're not exercising, keep your carbs down. You don't need as much. Protein and healthy fats keep the glucose stable. You can support mild ketosis, just keeping the carbs down lower and timing your carbohydrates around your exercise session. And this might help reduce brain fog for some people too. Another way, nutritional ketosis is not necessarily, well, I guess you could boost ketone utilization, but using fat for fuel when you exercise, zone 2 training can improve mitochondria function. You might increase your use of production of ketones, training in that zone 2, the bottom of zone 2 at your peak fat max. And that also helps increase metabolic flexibility. Then we can have the exogenous ketones, as I said. I like to have some small bottles of Ketone IQ available when I'm working. So I can take a shot. I had a presentation I was giving last weekend to 40 people, and I had to be thinking because I didn't have slides, and I took a shot beforehand to get my brain to be more clear so I could speak without having any notes and just kind of go from my memory. That doesn't always work. So I think Ketone IQ HVMN is a great option. So who benefits most from taking ketones for the brain? I find that as we dive into this a little bit more, over age 40, if you're more insulin resistant, perimenopause, menopause time, under high stress, dealing with brain fog, recovering from a TBI, if you're prone to a lot of mood swings, maybe you're really anxious, or maybe you're struggling with afternoon energy dips. These are all areas that with clients whose brains cannot effectively use glucose, the ketones become more of a reliable source of energy, and we can add that in as a shot, I said, or perhaps tweaking their nutrition and their timing of carbohydrates. So when we're creating the Future You blueprint, ketones can help be a great tool to protect the brain. So daily practices we can go into individually without doing extreme dieting where we add more stress to that bucket. And we want to keep energy high and our metabolism speeding up. So we have to be careful of going too low carb as we're more active and we have more stressors in our life, and perhaps looking at the timing and the source of food, getting rid of the processed foods and getting rid of the gluten-free stuff and packaged foods basically, and staying away from excess anti-nutrients, which was my other podcast I want to record. So let's look at protein forward meals, 40-50 grams of protein with that leucine threshold of 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine within that 40-50 grams of protein. And then low sugar, nutrient dense meals, avoiding carb heavy mornings. But again, I think that's timing it if you just worked out, because I work out in the morning and then I eat. Strength training and zone 2 training, 12 to 14 hour fasting from your last meal to your first meal the next day, and then proper hydration, electrolytes. Checking out Beam minerals are a great option. Now, optional enhancements are taking the ketone IQ, MCT oil to boost mild ketogenesis, doing fasted cardio if you're doing truly zone 1 towards your peak fat max, not doing something higher than that. And then lower evening carbs to help your sleep and glucose stability, get your body off that blood sugar roller coaster. So bottom line, as we age, the brain becomes less responsive to glucose. So talking about all these carbohydrates to take and nutrient density, we have to individualize it. Do you need to get more ketones in, or have times that you're in a little bit nutritional ketosis? Does it have to be all the time? It depends. They provide clean energy. Ketones reduce inflammation. Ketones can increase mitochondrial efficiency, boost mental clarity, we know for sure, and protect your neurons. So you don't have to be on a strict ketogenic diet is my point. You just need to create a metabolic environment where your brain has access to these ketones. This is what we look at metabolic flexibility. This is helping you be more resilient with your cognitive resiliency specifically. And think of this as your future you blueprint. And I really find and know that we need to do this individually. This is not a one size fits all. Again, as I use myself as example, if I work out first thing in the morning and I'm trying to do sprint work at the end of my workout, if I'm doing lifting heavy weights and I'm going to swim again at lunchtime when I worked out in the morning till like 7:30, I need to fuel properly. So I need to play with my nutrition and know when I need to eat more and when to time in those nature's carbs. Keep in mind the miracle grow for your neurons are what we call that BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factors. So remember, the BDNF is what I want to go into more, but why I'm using the sauna, how it can help your brain grow new connections, repair damaged cells, support memory, support mood, learning, improve your resiliency to stress, protect against cognitive decline. Because remember, as we age, especially after 40, 50, the BDNF naturally declines. But there are some strategies we've been talking about to improve them. So let's finish up 10 our top ways to improve BDNF. Strength training is the most powerful BDNF stimulator. When you lift weights, your muscles produce myokines that directly signal the brain to create more BDNF. So remember, BDNF, to get from your strength training, you need 2 to 3 times a week. Say that's 6 to 8 reps. I do 3 to 6, so I don't do that many, but compound lifts. And we talked about the last 2 reps challenging. So just to review, strength training builds muscles. More muscle helps increase insulin sensitivity. The more insulin sensitive you are able to reduce inflammation, and that can increase BDNF production and improve neuroplasticity. Number 2, we talked about zone 2 training, the Goldilocks zone for brain health, because it increases cerebral blood flow and mitochondria biogenesis. So good to get your metabolism tested so you know where your peak fat max is. At a point where you can talk, you can't sing, but you can breathe through your nose. It should be easy. Say that's 30 to 45 minutes. And getting lactate information, not just lactic acid theory, but just the lactate can cross the blood-brain barrier and stimulate BDNF too. It's good information to look into. Now, high-intensity interval training, short bursts of high-intensity training gives you big spikes of BDNF. This is more sprint interval training, not 1 to 4 minutes. We're talking 20 seconds to 60 seconds. Probably remember Tabata got to be really big forever ago. That was 4 minutes long. You warm up, you warm down, you go 20 seconds hard, recovery, 20 seconds hard, 8 times. But now I want you to do 20 seconds hard, 1 to 2 minutes recovery until you're in zone 1 for 1 minute or more. Sprint interval training is a powerful way to improve BDNF, but it only works when recovery and your hormones are stable. You don't want to do HIIT training if you're chronically stressed, you have chronic inflammation, and if you have under recovery. So you want to make sure you only add in interval training when your body's ready for it. Same with cold. I think a lot of people do the cold plunge too much and too long. And remember, women to do cold therapy should only do it low as 55 degrees, 58 degrees max, based on Dr. Stacy Sims. You can do a cold plunge, but you can also just do a cold shower, and your shower on cold, 30 to 60 seconds can help increase BDNF and dopamine for hours. So we don't need to spend we've been tempted to get a cold plunge, but it's $5,000. I can turn on my shower, end it on cold, and just get it on my neck. Or I can put a bucket of ice water and do a face dunk. And that can help increase BDNF, right? So we don't need to spend all this money on a lot of things. Now, sauna, it was a big investment, and I totally believe in that investment, which Sunlight and Sauna, it's amazing sales the holiday time of year. So I always tell people, wait till November, December to buy your sauna. Sunlight and Sauna is my favorite because a near infrared light, mid, and it has the far infrared. A lot of saunas are just far infrared light. But heat stress in general comes from the saunas, increase BDNF through heat shock proteins, and that enhances blood flow to the brain. So I make sure that I use our sauna 4 times a week or more. Now, the research is based 150, 174 degrees for sauna benefits to increase BDNF, but that is based on the Finnish studies. So I would want to look at sunlight and saunas that don't go 150 degrees. My highest is 140, and I'll do it for 20 minutes. But the Finnish saunas, I find more of the research is on that, so I should double check. But the saunas can help reduce neuroinflammation, improve glucose metabolism. So what else can you do to improve your brain health? I would just think about what's available to you and what can help my brain health as I age with what I'm doing now or what I have available to me. Cold sauna, you might not have, but you have access to cold. You can do your strength training. You can do the zone 2 training, and then sleep. Everyone sleeps. So BDNF rises during deep sleep and REM sleep. This is when your brain repairs itself. To increase BDNF while we're sleeping, you need to go to bed by 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. Stop eating 3 hours before bed. Watch the lights, no bright lights at night, just warm lights, or turn them off, dim them. And we talk about magnesium, glycine, and melatonin. Glycine is really helpful with that magnesium to help get in that deep sleep. And then stop screen exposure, 60 minutes. Not just TV, but that's iPads, your phones, your devices. Really important. If sleep is off, your BDNF plummets. So this is why I often start working on clients' sleep schedule first. Next one is sunlight, morning and midday. Sunlight regulates circadian rhythm. So we've talked a lot about morning sunlight, and that can actually help improve your serotonin, and serotonin converts into melatonin, but converts into BDNF. So I'd have to understand that a little more. But sunlight does also increase nitric oxide, which improves cerebral blood flow. So understanding what is free, right? There's another free one. And meditation, breath work is free as well. And then vagus nerve training. Research shows that meditation increases BDNF, especially in the hippocampus, which is our memory center. So slow nasal breathing can raise your BDNF, heart rate variability training, meditation, chanting, humming, yoga nidra, and gratitude journaling. These all lower cortisol, and that can help unblock BDNF production. Another solution, omega-3 fatty acids, especially the DHA. DHA is a brain structure fat. It improves membrane fluidity and upregulates BDNF. You can get this through salmon, sardines, mackerel, fish oil supplements, which I get from Keon. If you're vegetarian, you can take algae oil. And we also want to look at other foods to help brain, specifically turmeric, curcumin, blueberries, green tea, coffee, dark chocolate, resveratrol, quercetin, lion's mane mushroom, and creatine all reduce oxidative stress and activate pathways that trigger more BDNF. So polyphenols, and these are brain-specific nutrients, compounds that can directly stimulate BDNF. Then we talked about intermittent fasting. Short bouts at 12 to 16 hours fasting or not eating increases ketones, and ketones we talked about can up-regulate BDNF. And this can help improve neuroplasticity and reduce neuroinflammation. Then learning new skills. Learning new skills can make BDNF when it's challenged. So learning a new language, playing an instrument, new hobbies, new motor skills is pickleball or paddle. Novelty increases BDNF. And then chronic stress and inflammation. Cortisol shuts down BDNF production. So maybe that's why so many of us struggle, right? Chronic stress. Too much cortisol and then eventually too little cortisol. But inflammation also blocks BDNF signaling. So to raise your BDNF, you must lower chronic inflammation, blood sugar spikes, toxic load, EMF load, overtraining. And this is why we talk about all this in the holistic method. So we have the 8 elements we work on. So we want to create the future you blueprint. So let's look at supporting longevity, the strength training, your zone 2, getting some cold exposure, getting some sauna, focusing on your protein forward meals, your omega-3s, your deep restorative sleep, adding in meditation, vagus nerve work, trying to learn new skills, intermittent fasting, 12 to 16 hours, and keeping a low toxin and low stress environment. BDNF is the foundation of sharper memory, faster processing, better mood, healthy aging, mitochondria efficiency, metabolic flexibility. And this is why we need to talk about how we can improve and protect our brain for the future you. So let's remember, midlife isn't a decline, it's a recalibration. Your midlife hormone shifts are not a life sentence, they are a signal showing you exactly where your body needs support. So when you learn to work with your biology instead of fighting it, everything is changing. So we're talking about building muscle, eating that protein forward meals, supporting thyroid conversion, gut health, protecting your mitochondria, prioritizing your sleep, getting that deep restorative sleep, managing your stress to manage your cortisol and your vagus nerve, moving daily, and training in that zone 2. So when you support your hormones, you support your brain, your metabolism, your energy, your mood. So let me know if you're ready to start taking ownership of your health and be your best version of yourself, and we can create your future you blueprint. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon. Hopefully you can share this with someone else that's interested in how they can be their best self in the future and be having full use of their brain as they get older.
Thanks for listening to the Fit and Healthy Athlete Podcast.
Coach Debbie Potts draws from decades of experience. Ready to optimize your health? Visit www.debbiepotts.net for a discovery call. Find her on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Coach Debbie Potts. To support the show, like, rate, and review. See you next time.